This hour is sponsored by Bit Central, efficient media workflows.
This is NAB Show Live.
Good morning. Welcome to NAB Show Live. I'm Seth Hurst, and I'm your host for this segment. Wow, it's been like nonstop, jam-packed and fun-filled. The floor is still packed. Lots of new technology, and hopefully you've been watching along and seeing everything that we've been able to show you from the floor and from the stage. Today we're going to be talking, I'm your immersive guy, and today we're going to be talking immersive sound, which I have to admit is not something I know just enough as a producer to make me dangerous. So I have Joel Douek from Ecco VR and Marin from Here 360. Joel and I have yet to have the opportunity to work together. Isn't like we haven't tried. And Matt and I have worked together a few times. So, you know, you hear this stuff that sound is the stepchild that nobody considers, but now you're getting more and more attention all the time because it's so absolutely necessary to the experience. So Joel, I'd like for you to talk a little about Ecco VR, and then we'll talk a little about Here 360, and then we'll talk about the challenges in sound, especially in live. I'd like to talk a little bit about live as well. So Joel, tell us about Ecco VR.
Well, my background is as a composer and sound designer, and when we started hearing about virtual reality popping up again around about 2014, 15, we saw this kind of gaping hole where sound was not being done right. And so it's something that we set about doing, is teaching ourselves and figuring out how can we improve this, this state of things, and how can we bring top-notch spatial audio to experiences. And it's been quite a ride. I would say that, it's something that we still try to do as sound guys, is it's kind of our job to keep evangelizing about the power of sound or the importance of sound. And as we move into, even if it's augmented reality, I like to remind people and remind myself that ultimately sound and music is the origin of reality augmentation. It all starts there. We've been using sound to effectively augment and qualify our experiences since as long as there's been humans.
But the way we've usually heard sound is right, left, or stereo.
That's correct.
Except in real life, of course.
That's correct.
And well, tell us a little about Here 360, because I know more than they will know, so I don't want to jump in
Sure.
and assume. So.
Well, thanks for having me on, Brian.
Yep.
And Brian and I have worked together. I'm Matt from Here 360. My background actually is in music production, so 20 years in LA.
Very interesting that you both came from the music worlds.
Yeah, really focused on recording, mixing, producing records, regular 2-channel stereo records. But over the years, my business partner, Greg Morgenstein, he's back in LA right now. We worked together a lot on a lot of different projects, including film and surround sound projects. Well, we ended up consulting for some companies, helping them sculpt their sonic sculpture, you could say, for their product lines. Some of those companies happened to be dabbling in spatial audio before virtual reality, even existed. And it was a time when nobody cared about it, really. But it was interesting product lines, for enhancing tablets or sound bars and things like that. So we learned a lot doing that. And when VR popped up, we found this opportunity, I think kind of similar to yours. Well, we were thinking, well, let's figure out how to make this really cool, because we have all this experience and expertise with sound already and recording and mixing. Let's figure out how to actually leverage that and translate that. And so we decided to start a company called Here 360. We specialize in immersive audio, hardware and software solutions for 360 video, VR, AR, XR, traditional video on demand platforms. We have solutions for that as well. And Brian and I had the pleasure of working together on a series of live events. Starting last year at NAB.
Yeah, and this is where it gets complicated for me. And for creators and producers, so when I met Joel, you were up on a ladder at the meta stage.
That's right.
Adjusting sound for volumetric.
Yeah.
Which to me all of a sudden was, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that. So, this outside, capture outside. And then this winter when we did Rolling Loud, and we were talking about, which is a hip hop festival, and we were talking about how that sound should be captured. I have to say, it's so, especially in music, it's so complicated to me to get it right, because if you don't, especially where things are coming from, I mean, I get it in audio games like Grand Theft Auto where you're moving closer to the riot and the sound gets louder. I get that object-oriented sound, but we had talked about taking the sound from the front of the house and how you were going to augment it so that the person in the headset would feel the presence, would feel like they were in the crowd. But then I think, okay, so what you're designing, first field of design would be, if we're saying this is virtual reality, okay, so we're going to be in the headset. But no, what you design also has to work on mobile phones, because people may be just using mobile phones for 360. And by the way, not all those mobile phones have the same sound capability, right?
Right.
Or use the same format.
That's right.
And then you have the new headsets that are coming out where the sound is actually not even in a headphone. It's, in case you don't want to put one on, it's somewhere in the strap, like with Oculus Go.
Projected, yeah.
And then you have to deal with what else is out here to make sure you still get the same experience that you would get, maybe not the same, but so how do you deal? I guess the question is, there are so many freaking variables for sound design for one project and consumption. I get the image part. I know how that works. But the challenges that you face every day is everything. Are you hacking?
Well, we can talk about Rolling Loud. So Samsung VR, they have a specific rendering system on their platform, and they've got a number of them for spatial audio, which we can fit into natively with our products. But they also have traditional 5.1 spatial audio systems. So let's take Rolling Loud, for example. You're talking about a live concert. You want to approach it from your perspective, right? If my camera's here and I'm watching the show, I want to feel like I'm in the audience, yet I'm going to need to have some impact added in from the front of house so that it doesn't feel too ambient. And when I turn my head, I expect the sound to move with the visual, right? In order to convince me that I'm there. But you're right, there's all these different formats now. You've got phones, you've got headsets. How do we go to each one of them? Well, in the case of Samsung, what they've done in the past is they've streamed a 5.1, a traditional 5.1 stream, and then they've sort of taken that and transcoded that to different platforms. So for web, they've ripped off the left and the right. So what that means is we've avoided using center channel. Because if we use center channel for anything, it's gonna get lost when you go to your actual web player, right? Mobile phones in general will act similarly to the headsets as long as the player can support it. The web player is the biggest hinge, but so it is a little bit of a hack. You have to be thinking about all these different platforms and how to make it sound good on each one, and you have to constantly be checking each one to make sure that they sound good after the stream. While you're streaming.
While we're actually posting these acts now.
Sure.
And the sound is the last thing that we're going to optimize. And so when I'm in the headset, I'm thinking as we're editing, and this is really interesting because we're editing in two different places, so we all get in the headset and we talk about what's going on. And the sound, that final optimization, that is going to be, it's music for God's sakes, and it's a concert, and that's the emotion. Especially when you have call and response from the artist to the crowd. The artist is saying, no, and the crowd is surging forward and responding, and being able to capture that, that's that magic.
And to speak to that, that's why we just grab as much content as possible. We ingest everything we can, We'll take all the microphones from the TV trucks, we'll set up our own microphones all over the place. We'll take as many feeds from front of house as we can. And
you'll figure it out afterwards.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
and if it's a live stream, we'll take the key components, compile that stuff, and then give it back, for the live stream. But for post, we'll track as much as we can because we want that flexibility And speaking about formats, that was just the tip of the iceberg. Then you've got all sorts of other formats.
You've got the sound formats.
You've got all these ambisonic formats, first order, second order, third order. You've got omni-binaural, you've got Atmos, you've got all these different things that you can be looking at delivering to.
Yeah.
So it's quite a bit to handle.
On My Brother's Keeper, we had Scott Gershon design the sound for the cinematic VR piece we did. And when I walked into the studio, he just looked and he said, I had to come up with a completely different workflow for you guys.
Yeah.
I want to talk about confined space and Foley. So you were up on the ladder, there's about to do this capture. We have a series that we're working on right now that is all about moral relativism, how people behave with each other in confined spaces.
Interesting.
And there's a lot of Foley work, but in the confined space, something is happening over here, but something is happening over here, and sound is a major part. So when you go to work in the beginning, do you come in as the sound designer in VR, and I'm setting film aside, the sound designer in VR, and work with the storytellers? When the storytellers, this is the action over here, but the attention I need is over here. How do you design for these confined spaces, or for Metastage as well?
Well, I think, that speaks to, I think, probably an important thing for both Matt and me. Obviously we have similar backgrounds, but coming from, let's say, the content creation part of it, and then trying to figure out what will we need to do in order to capture the elements. And so in contrast to hiring sound guys, location guys, and stuff like that, we taught ourselves to do it, because being mindful of what we would need meant that we would make specific choices based on how the project was kind of going to roll out. And that's why we ended up doing, location stuff and figuring out microphone placement and stuff like that. So, it's always an imperfect art, science. I mean, Matt mentioned, it's pretty interesting in that sense that you're making it up as you go along. You capture as much as you possibly can. You're dealing with the fact that the camera sees everything, so where do you put your microphones? That's your first problem that you're going to deal with. You're going to deal with the issue of mostly when you want to spatialize things, you really want to have mono tracks. You want to record things as separated as possible. But of course, when you have multiple microphones, they're each going to pick up what the other microphone does. So you have to figure out a way of staging it so that there's enough separation. That can mean, for example, when actors are talking, that you don't want them to overlap.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you have to mic actors, so you're micing the environment, you're micing the actors. It's different in live because you can't grab from a sound library, right? You can't just
That's right.
You can't augment.
What we've been building at Metastage, which is it's pretty interesting, is there you've got 106 cameras, so you really can't put a microphone anywhere. All you can do is put lav mics like these ones hidden.
Sure.
And these are very imperfect because they rustle and they're inconsistent. And so we said to ourselves, well, we want to be able to capture decent sound in the same way that they're capturing image. How can we build a system that is going to capture this entire area, this sphere of sound from the outside in? And so we contacted a partner of ours, which is Sennheiser, and brought them on board with this challenge. They've been working on some technology and created what is now, I believe it's the first volumetric audio capture system. And it means that you can have an actor standing there. The microphones are around there, about 7 feet away, so they're not close. And we record everything. It goes through some magic. And what you come out with is a single mono track that sounds like a microphone was right there in front of the actor, that we can then in post-production steer anywhere we want because it's a mono track, so we can spatialize it easily. And I think that's where increasingly we kind of want to go. When I'm looking at new technologies that enable us to kind of record from further away and yet maintain the sense of presence that we really need.
Okay, so here's the challenge in image. I can shoot at 12K, I can't display at 12K right now. The best I can do is 4K, I think, soon 8, 6, whatever.
Yeah.
But I know I'm future-proofing. I am going to shoot at 12K so that I have a library in the future which will have value. Sound design, and is there something similar to that? Like you just said, well, now we have volumetric capture, but are the listening devices, are the headphones, are the sound that's in phones, are they capable of broadcasting or streaming in the sound that you've designed?
I think, we know already what are the limits of the human hearing capacity. And I think, CD came pretty close to that. And vinyl maybe a little bit better, albeit a bit more scratchy. And so we're already able to capture and play back pretty much at the fidelity we might ever
So
need.
you have where you might not have true fidelity in image.
Yeah.
Especially in volumetric,
Yeah.
you're getting to the point where you will. In light field, you'll definitely
Yeah.
have. So you're saying sound is already at that place. You see how little I know?
Yeah,
it's
I
good.
think
Thanks for answering the
but-
question.
Yeah.
But also to add on to that, I mean, you could be, let's say, creating your spatial audio track deliverable as a third order ambisonic file, right? Which
you-
you're going to deliver as a first order for now, because.
So ambisonic, define ambisonic really quickly.
So it's a spherical harmonic, system. Third order down to first order, it's a different number of tracks for each deliverable. First order, you've got 4 tracks. Second order, you've got 9. Third order, you've got 16.
And then you can place those tracks
Basically,
spatially.
it's like a super complicated, mid-side decode system with a center pressure
it's
channel.
kind of just a way of representing the sphere of sound, and the resolution that you have is determined by what we call the order. If it's first order, you've got 4 channels, only 4 channels to represent the entire
sphere.
360 space.
But you can do it.
You can do it, but it's not
not as
great.
true as it should
because
be.
if you want people to be able to really say, okay, that sound is coming from exactly there, you don't have enough resolution really to determine that. Once you get to third order, you've got 16 channels, all of a sudden you've got higher resolution. It's like going from, 1080 to 4K. It's the same kind of thing.
But that's exactly what I was, getting to. Is I think that's a nice example of where you might have a high resolution deliverable, but you might only deliver it in first order because the platform can only.
So you
support
are
it.
scaling. You
You're
are
scaling
down
it,
converting.
but you have that high res master. At least later on, you can deploy it when the platform can do it. And there's other things too. If you're talking about a rendering engine on a mobile phone, you might not have enough filters. We call them HRTF filters to actually take those sound positions and localize them around your head. Because each filter takes up a certain amount of processing power, right? So again, we're representing a sphere. So whether you have 6 filters to represent the sphere, or whether you have 80, or whether you have 7,000, right? We're talking about resolution and where we can pinpoint and map, a decoded sound in a position in space. So those are perfect examples of scaling quality and what we'll be able to do to increase that quality.
But you need to, I'm thinking in this piece we did, there was an explosion. And in the highest resolution of the sound in the Oculus Rift, you literally heard it come down around you.
Right.
But then in other iterations, and I won't say who, you heard it, but it didn't do this.
Sure.
So you have to prioritize. How do you do that? How do you say, well, we're going to keep this, or this is not possible on this platform, but the director and the producer say, but that's so important to the story. How do you prioritize?
These are the creative choices that go along with it, and this is also why we do a couple things a little differently at Here 360. We use some other formats besides ambisonic. We use omnibinaural formats because we love the resolution of the sound that we can capture with our microphones, and with 8 channels, we can provide a hyper realistic feeling that we can control a little bit more. And so but again, these are all just creative choices. Like it's amazing that we have all these creative choices, and depending on your application or how you want to deploy it, you can make that choice.
So you're like
what's important to you. Yeah.
You're like oral surgeons in the respect that you're. So the question then becomes, what part of this? There's no part of this that's automated, is there? Look at them! Look at them looking at each other.
Well, I would say that there could be. There's been some recent advances that uses image tracking as a way of steering the spatialization of the sound, and it's not great. It doesn't work 100%, but it's the beginnings of something. Because normally, the way we will spatialize something is we'll look at the video and we'll kind of follow spot effectively. Where is the person moving? And we'll follow the sound, with a kind of a panner. So we can quite soon, I think, move into a place where that process is automated, and it'll follow itself. You just say, that's my target, keep the sound on this person. So we can already pretty much do that. But I don't know. I mean, I also don't know if we want to automate it, because you know it is a very creative process, and you're making choices as you go, both on the kind of compromises
you both
make.
come from music, so you know how important the mix is in the music. And
yeah, exactly. Maybe I'm personally not willing to relinquish that control.
No, and I feel the same way. I feel that the artist needs to be able to put a hand on things in a certain way to come up with a rendering that is appropriate. But there are ways to automate certain aspects of this. Some of the workflow we worked out for the live productions that we were doing together, the next stages would include automating certain parts of that process. Like, let's say we want to create multiple perspectives based off of different camera angles, and we want to actually change the audio perspective when you change the camera cut, right?
Which we would love for you to do.
Right. Well, so we have workflows that we've kind of strategized about, how do you do that, right? It usually involves a lot more manual work, but then spitting out multiple multi-channel mixes that go into a switch that now become automated, right? Because now you're cutting the video, and the video is cutting the audio based off of what the director in the wants on the line cut.
So you could find ways to batch convert that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these are hybrid automation workflows where they still are going to require some manual mixing, but once it's set up, then we can say, well, it's much easier to manage.
So just as a practical question, the way that the sound is captured, can you alter that perspective after the sound is captured? That if you didn't do it originally, like you're in post and now you're taking the live and you're posting the live and you want to have that sound perspective, can you move it around?
Well, that's where it comes in, where it comes in, like where we want to capture as much content as possible, because yes, at that point after the fact, if you have the data.
Are we doing that on this?
Then you can do whatever you want.
You can rotate it. Let's say you decide, we're gonna open the concert with the audience in front of us and not the band in front of us. You can take that whole sphere and you can rotate it. You can get inside that sphere of sound that you've recorded in post-production, and then shift some of the levels up and some down. So there's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of flexibility.
It's great for 360 because at least the music industry has come to expect a certain level of sound production in linear, in 2D.
That's right.
And we have to come up to that level of production in image and sound in order for them to buy in to what this is. It isn't just about plunking a camera down anymore. We had many, we were directed as a live event, and with images in sphere using voices technology and making sure that the quality of the sound that you were here is what you were going to hear in the 2D broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to ask about hardware. It's like my last question. There are constant improvements in sound capture, not just the software, but the hardware. Are there sound capture devices, microphones now, that are specifically sensitive or made for virtual reality, for that kind of immersion, or is it just adapting what's out there? Or changing the software?
Well, there's a whole lot of, my company builds a microphone. It's called 8-Ball. It's an 8-channel capturing system to address the workflow issue of how do we not get the microphone in the camera, in the way of the camera, what the camera is seeing. We built an internal clamping mechanism that allows you to attach it directly underneath the camera system.
Which I have now assigned personality and name to.
Yes.
Under each camera, I've named them. So
yes, you've named them all. Yes. Yeah. So we've addressed some of those issues that we thought of right away. Like we're like, well, this is a problem. I can't put a microphone here. So what am I going to do? How do we do this? But that addresses one part of the element. There's a lot of innovations. There's ambisonic microphones that are out. They've been out for years, and there's new ones that are coming out every day. But then again, the traditional recording and capture systems just using mono microphones still works fantastically too.
And there's a reason we have to do that, which is that even your very best microphone, fanciest ambisonic, doesn't matter how many channels, suffers from exactly the same problems as any other microphone, which is the moment you walk away from it and you're more than 2 feet away, really what you're going to start to capture is more an ambience. And I was chatting to people here, who make a popular ampersonic microphone, and they told me, they're kind of marketing it now really as an ambience microphone.
Sure.
So as not to kind of give people false hopes, which I think people did have, that here's your 360 camera, here's your 360 microphone, you put one on top of the other, and everybody
there you have it.
There you have it. And what you get back is just, it's not adequate.
Well,
it sounds too distant. And
just to that point, usually the onboard microphones on the cameras will not suffice for the kind of sound design that you want.
Yeah, they never did.
So you'll have lavs, you'll have other mics, and we had to become kind of adept at planting mics in discrete places. We spend a lot of time crawling around kind of under desks and in
Well, that is the music industry.
Exactly.
So
in amongst bushes, figuring out like a way to hide a microphone where the camera can't see it. And all of those feeds, as Matt was saying, you don't know if it's going to be useful, but you want to cover your bases every possible way. Maybe that one will be the hero mic of that particular shoot.
Well, Joel and Mike, Matt, I feel we have only scratched the surface.
Yes,
this could have been a workshop, for God's sakes. I hope this is being taught in universities and that sound designers.
Actually, universities are some of our biggest clients. I mean,
that's excellent.
It's fantastic actually that they're looking to.
And also, if anyone that's interested in this, we created a course. It's an online course run out of Columbia College Chicago on immersive sound and music for XR.
Perfect.
And so we kind of poured all our knowledge and hearts into that. So you can find it.
Excellent. Okay, so this is our start for Immersive today. We started with sound. I'm just being heard. I need to stretch. So me and Steve, we become very close, the director.
Yes.
So I guess my last question would be talking about teaching this and learning this. It's great to have an online course, but in terms of going into universities and being able to say, okay, now we're not dealing, I guess now we're not dealing with traditional sound design, but this has to be part of a sound design curriculum. And are people who are designing sound for games, are they perfect to design sound for, is it a short hop to design sound for?
Well, there's different ways. People who are working in sound designing for games are usually working within gaming engines to do that. So it's a slightly different but similar approach, especially if you're using object-based spatial audio systems that attach to individual sounds. Talking about games, we actually just created a new product called Audio Royale, which is for gamers, for PC gamers, which takes advantage of the traditional spatial output that games utilize now, which is usually 5.1 or 7.1 outputs. So we created a tool for Fortnite players to be able to do that,
cool.
right? Just consumers. It's a regular consumer tool. So there's, but I think there is a lot between game audio creation and spatial audio creation for video content. I think there's a lot of.
Well, there is, now you have, like Contagion just came out, so now you're having AAA virtual reality titles come out. And so I would guess that would be a little different. And then there's another perspective that Unity now has Cinecast and Cinemachine.
Sure.
And these are game engine cameras that can actually go right into an ADEM switcher so that you can do live what we're watching and then you can do live into the game.
It's very cool stuff. I mean, we have Unity plugins. So if you're doing game sound design or virtual reality sound design, we have Unity plugins that allow you to ingest our omni-binaural captures for immersive beds, or even 5.1, 7.1, 714 virtualization, things like that. There's a lot you can do and cross over. So
I was going to say, also on the education front, I think a lot of what we find ourselves trying to do is just let people know that we've moved, in the same way we did a long time ago from mono to stereo. Now we've gone from stereo not only to surround, but to the entire, up and down as well. And
so it's 6 DOF sound.
Yeah, 6 DOF sound. And so we asked them the question, right, now we can do this, what are you going to do with it? Like, what content are we going to create that justifies using this in a way that's not gimmicky, but it is creatively interesting? And so I find myself, I go and talk to composers and I say, how are you going to write your music differently to accommodate and also to make full use of this incredible opportunity we've all got to do something?
It's a
you know,
great
with
point.
immersive sound.
It reminds me of the Association album that I got as a kid, where it was like early stereo. That tells you how old I am. And you'd have one voice in one ear and one instrument in another.
Yeah.
And it was actually disconcerting, because if something happened to your thing and you only heard one channel, you were, you know. Just one final question. If you don't get the image right, you can make people sick.
Mm-hmm.
How does sound affect that? Or is that irrelevant? If you do sound wrong, can people be disoriented and...
Maybe not in exactly the same way as the visuals work, because sound fundamentally is it's a driver of emotion, and so what you can find is that in video games, which is also the most extreme use of sound and visuals, really, by having, you know, kind of barrage of a lot of aggressive music that's kind of frenetic stuff, you can contribute to the sense of nausea, and by contrast, by having, you know, calming sound and stuff like that, you can help mitigate it. The problem is that, you know, in a video game, typically where there's a lot of action, by nature you're going to want to have something pretty energetic in the music. And so while I don't think I can personally make anyone throw up by, you know, doing something a little crazy with the music, I could probably contribute a little bit to it.
Yeah, but that would be on purpose, not by
I'd do it on
accident.
purpose, but we have actually given some thought to, can sound help prevent nausea in VR?
That's a great-
And I think it can help. It can be a tool to help kind of just set an emotional environment that is going to, you know, pull you away from that kind of a sensation.
My God, we next time we get together, we'll have a neuroscientist on the panel. So, okay, gentlemen. Now we're going to wrap. Thank you so much, Joel. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Matt.
Thanks, Brian.
Like I
Thank you,
say, we
Brian.
only scratched the surface. The Columbia School is offering a course.
That's right,
You go-
Columbia College Chicago online, and you can find the course on immersive sound and music. You know, please go ahead and find it. It's great.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.
Brian, appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
This hour is sponsored by Bit Central, efficient media workflows.